Regarding the $3 million, I've made the decision to split it between my mother and myself. This choice came right after my father's funeral, Robert, after going through the inheritance papers without asking for permission, remarked, "Kelly, don't be so greedy." "Oh, now I can finally quit my job," he added. "I should thank the old man for that." "Doting old man? Are you referring to my father?" I accidentally blurted out, not hiding my confusion. Robert and my mother-in-law began eagerly discussing plans to buy a new car and do some shopping. Faced with this unexpected shift, I couldn't keep my emotions in check. I was on the verge of snapping, exhausted by household chores. I asked for some money, and then they insulted my father. I no longer wanted to live with Robert and his mother. Holding back my frustration, I forced a smile and said, "Sure, use the money however you and my mother-in-law see fit." I'm Kelly Cohan, 38 years old, a housewife working alongside my husband. My parents were doctors who ran a well-known clinic in our hometown. As an only child, I was showered with love. After graduating from pharmacy school, I landed a job at a major pharmaceutical company. Although my parents were disappointed I didn't become a doctor, they respected my choice. 10 years ago, my mother tragically passed away in an accident, leaving my father and me devastated. During that difficult period, Robert, my boyfriend at the time, was there for me. We met through a mutual friend, and 2 years after my mother's passing, Robert proposed. He was just an ordinary salaryman working in the food industry. Despite his modest income, I believed we could make it work and be a happy couple. My father was overjoyed when I told him about our engagement. "I've seen how Robert has supported you, Kelly. I'm so grateful. Please continue to look after her," he said. Standing before my father, Robert stood tall and promised, "I'll make her happy." I stood beside Robert, filled with a sense of joy. The following week, we visited Robert's family home to announce our engagement. His mother, a divorced woman with bold makeup, scrutinized me with a cold look. "Marriage, huh? So, you're Robert's choice? Aren't you a little plain for him? And you're older, right? Wouldn't a younger, prettier girl be a better match?" Robert quickly responded, "Mom, you know Pharmaceuticals? Kelly works there. Her father is a doctor with his own practice." I expected Robert to highlight my character, but instead, he focused on financial benefits. His mother's face softened into a smile at that revelation. "Oh, Robert, you should have told me this sooner. That changes everything. I approve of the marriage." "It's nice to meet you, Kelly, thank you." With Robert's mother's approval, he was overjoyed. Still, I couldn't shake off a sense of unease, despite the smooth course things were taking. When we went to register our marriage, my father, who was a doctor and real estate investor, gifted me an apartment in a luxury building in New York City. I told Robert, "Dad gave us this apartment as a wedding gift, but let's make it our new home. Let's live here, happily together." Robert smiled, and that's how our married life began. But soon after marriage, I noticed something unsettling. Robert, who had lived with his parents until then, seemed completely inept when it came to household chores. He couldn't cook, didn't know how to use the washing machine, and showed no interest in learning. He would leave his trash lying around, never bothering to dispose of it. While I wanted to share the housework, Robert's indifferent attitude only made me more frustrated. During the first year of our marriage, I did all the chores, though I grumbled a bit since we were still in the honeymoon phase. But as time passed and I grew exhausted from work while trying to keep up with chores, I reached my breaking point. In the second year, I decided to talk seriously to Robert about sharing the housework. I voiced my frustration, but instead of showing appreciation or understanding, Robert replied, "I'm tired from work too. You're much better at chores than I am. It's easier if you just do them." Dismissed in this way, Robert didn't help, and I continued carrying the entire burden of the household. That wasn't the only issue, though. I also discovered that Robert's mother had her own set of strange expectations. Since Robert wasn't interested in seasonal events, I thought it would be nice to send his mother a quality scarf and some carnations for Mother's Day. But after choosing a beautiful scarf from a department store, she called me, sounding displeased. She criticized it for not being from a famous brand and scolded me for giving such a cheap item. I tried to explain the quality, but she wouldn't listen, insisting she wanted items from luxury brands. Shocked, I shared this with Robert when he came home, but instead of empathizing, he said, "What's the big deal? Just get her what she wants." Robert didn't take my side, and from that point on, we began giving his mother cash, as she demanded. By our 5th year of marriage, she started visiting us regularly, always coming up with new reasons to ask for money. Robert, smiling every time, gave in without any complaints. Even though I worked, Robert's income was limited, and we could barely manage day-to-day expenses. Eventually, I had to dip into our savings to keep things afloat. Though I was frustrated, I knew how much Robert valued his mother, who had been there for me during tough times. She's the mother of someone important to me, I kept telling myself, and with that thought, I endured. Now, in our 8th year of marriage, I continue to handle all the housework and keep giving money to my mother-in-law. One day, during this routine, my father, whom I hadn't seen in a while, called unexpectedly. What he shared during our rare meeting was nothing short of shocking. He told me he had terminal cancer, and there was no longer any treatment available. Overcome with shock, tears poured down my face. My father gently stroked my head, just like when I was a child, and said, "Kelly, this is fate, let it go quietly." I asked, "Dad, why you?" And so, my life became a chaotic mix of work, household duties, and now visits to my father at the hospital. Although my work had some flexibility, managing the household was no easy task. When I told Robert that I would be caring for my father, he showed no empathy and gave no indication that he wanted to help. "It's tough with your father's condition, just do your best," he said. Robert visited my father only once. With so much on my plate, I had no time to think about Robert. If I had any spare energy, I wanted to prioritize my father. One day, as my father lay in his hospital bed, he asked me, "Kelly, how's your marriage with Robert?" Caught off guard, I reflected on Robert's behavior at home and his mother's attitude. I couldn't respond properly. Seeing my hesitation, my father seemed to understand and spoke gently. "Kelly, you don't have to endure it. Think about your happiness. Don't worry, you won't suffer after I'm gone." I couldn't hold back my tears and sobbed as my father silently squeezed my hand. 3 months later, the inevitable happened. My father passed away quietly. Grief-stricken, I started making funeral arrangements. Robert, however, showed no interest in my sorrow and didn't help with any preparations, but I was too caught up in the funeral planning to focus on him. Many friends and acquaintances attended the funeral, giving it a heartfelt farewell. Even Robert and his mother, who had remained distant, showed up. The day after the funeral, I received a call from a lawyer about my father's inheritance. I arranged a meeting and learned the astonishing details. After taxes and deductions, my father's estate amounted to over $3 million. His earnings from being a doctor and his investments in real estate had left behind this vast fortune, all of it to be inherited by me, his only child. Overcome with surprise and thankfulness, yet feeling a sense of nervousness at the thought of managing such a large sum, I began the process of dealing with the inheritance. Once I returned home, I laid out the papers I had received from the lawyer and began reading through them. Fatigue quickly overcame me, and I ended up dozing off on the couch for a short nap. When I woke up, I could hear Robert and his mother laughing and chatting in the distance. "Wait, Robert and his mom too? When did you get here?" I asked. As I spoke, Robert walked over with a wide grin. "Yes, Kelly, well done," he said, "but why?" I was taken aback by his sudden enthusiasm and noticed he was holding the inheritance documents I had received from the lawyer. "Hey, don't just go through those without asking," I said, both surprised and upset that Robert was reading the papers without permission. My mother-in-law, completely indifferent, piped up, "Wow, $3 million inheritance, isn't this amazing? Now we can live comfortably forever." I was confused, unsure why she was so excited. Then Robert became more serious, saying, "About this $3 million. I've decided it'll be split between my mom and me." This was right after my father's funeral. Robert had taken it upon himself to look through the documents I was meant to handle, and then casually said to me, "Kelly, don't get too greedy." "Oh, now I can finally quit my job," he added. "I have to, more than the daughter of an old man." "Daughter of an old man? Are you talking about my father?" I blurted out without thinking. "Anyway, let's get this inheritance sorted and move the money into our joint account ASAP, Robert said, ignoring my confusion and acting as though everything was fine. He and my mother-in-law excitedly discussed buying a new car and going on shopping sprees. At that moment, my emotions finally boiled over. I couldn't take it anymore, doing all the household chores, being asked for money, and now, on top of it all, they were insulting my father. With gritted teeth, I forced a smile and said, "Sure, use the money as you and my mother-in-law, please, go ahead." Seemingly pleased, my mother-in-law cheerfully said, "That's the spirit, Kelly, so quick to agree. Now, make sure you work hard to earn more. I don't want our savings to go down, so work hard." I nodded and pretended to listen as she went on about her selfish demands. From then on, Robert and my mother-in-law lived like people who had lost their minds, spending money recklessly. Robert quit his job right away, and my mother-in-law practically moved into our house, staying there all the time. Every morning they would leave, returning with luxury items they'd splurged on. The 3-star restaurant we went to today wasn't as good as we thought, they would complain. It didn't live up to our high standards. They spoke as though they were wealthy celebrities, yet they dumped all the housework onto me as if I were a servant. Robert seemed to think the inheritance would arrive any day, and he carelessly drained our joint account. My $100,000 in savings started disappearing rapidly. When I tried to stop them from spending so much, Robert laughed it off. "What are you worried about? Isn't $3 million coming soon? So, a little spending now isn't a problem. I've already stopped it," I warned, but Robert ignored me completely. A month later, Robert and my mother-in-law decided to take a trip to Hawaii. I wasn't invited and was left home alone. After sending them off, I decided it was time to act. About a week later, while I was enjoying a quiet day at home, I heard a loud knock on the door. Wondering what was going on, I looked at the intercom and saw Robert and his mom, both wearing Hawaiian shirts, standing outside. "What do you want?" I asked, my tone cold with anger. Robert shouted, "What do you mean? Why won't the door open?" Seeing their confusion, I responded confidently through the intercom, "I changed the locks, so it won't open." "What? Why? Let's talk about this," Robert pleaded, trying to stay calm. "Feel free to talk, I'll join you soon," I said. After a bit more shouting at the door, and realizing it was futile, Robert and his mother left for a cafe. Once I confirmed they had gone, I followed them there. When I arrived, I saw them sitting there, seething with anger. "Hey, what's the deal? Did you really change the locks? Hand over the new keys now," Robert demanded. "I don't need to give you the keys, you both need to leave that house," I told them calmly. Facing an angry Robert, I held up a piece of paper. It was a divorce petition I had already filled out. "Divorce? You're really divorcing me?" Robert's mom said in shock. "Kelly, why is this happening?" I spoke calmly to the two of them, who were now panicking. "By the way, you've been spending like crazy. Are you sure your finances are okay?" "What money? Of course, everything is fine," Robert snapped, spitting as he spoke. "Your father's inheritance is coming, right? There should still be over $50,000 in our joint account. Let me show you." Robert pulled out his phone and opened the banking app to check. His face dropped when he saw the account balance. What's going on? Where did the money go? It was here just the other day," he exclaimed. Hearing his words, his mother quickly checked her phone, looking equally puzzled. I calmly explained the situation to them. "Of course, the money's gone. I moved $5,000 into my account as part of the property division for our divorce." What are you talking about?" Robert's face turned red with anger for a moment, but then he smirked as if remembering something. "Fine, I'll divorce you, then transfer the inheritance you got from your dad. After all, property acquired during the marriage gets divided, right?" "Well, you're mistaken," I said. "You didn't know? The inheritance I received doesn't count for division, even though we were married." There was an awkward silence. Then Robert and his mom's faces shifted in shock, as they realized they'd misunderstood. I was left in disbelief and could only sigh. "No, that can't be right. It's impossible," his mother muttered, her face turning a deep red in frustration. "Check it yourself," I said with a mocking smile. Robert scrambled to find more information. "It says here that property inherited from a parent is considered separate property. It's not divided between spouses during a divorce." "Wait, seriously?" His mother, too, stared at her phone in shock. Then Robert turned to me, desperation in his eyes. "Kelly, please, don't divorce me. I don't have any savings, no job. How am I supposed to live?" Despite his pleas, I stood firm, determined to move on. I spoke clearly to him. "Take responsibility for your actions. I will never forget how you both treated me. I'm divorcing you, and I'll go to court if I need to." Frightened by my unyielding stance, Robert and his mother shrank back. I left the cafe, feeling a sense of relief. Later, the divorce proceedings went smoothly. The $50,000 I moved from our joint account was officially part of the marital property division. I eventually succeeded in getting Robert and his mother out of my life. Robert, having squandered the division money, was left with nothing. On top of that, he was drowning in debt from his Hawaii trip and other expenses paid with credit cards. Now, Robert and his mother live in a rundown apartment. working tirelessly to pay off their debts. The drastic shift from their former lavish lifestyle has been a harsh reality check for them. As for me, I sold the condo I once shared with Robert and moved into my father's old apartment. I continue to work as before, but with the inheritance I received from my father, I now live comfortably, with deep gratitude to my late father. I'm ready to start fresh and cherish my life. I'm focused on protecting my happiness and enjoying a peaceful future. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Stay stunned.